So, do you remember what your first story you ever wrote was? Do you have it somewhere? Do you have the first piece you ever
first
wrote?
story period?
First period.
All right, there's a story behind the first story. So way back in the day, I started in the business. I was 15, wanting to, desperately be, my motivation was to desperately be as close to football, particularly the NFL, as possible, and realizing early on wasn't going to be as a player. Coaching was a legitimate thought in my mind, and as I did more research about it, I realized not all coaches had played the game or played it at any appreciable level.
Sure.
And it's about your knowledge, your organization, all that. So that was a consideration. But back in the day, it was the other thing that could get you closer, even more so than broadcasting. I wasn't going to be a play-by-play guy, but was writing. So I pursued the newspaper business, and again, in its heyday, when I was 15 years old, and the local newspaper in Utica, New York, hired me as a correspondent. $7.50 a piece, whatever that was.
An
sometimes.
hour? No, a piece. A piece.
Oh man, a piece, whatever that piece was. So I get called to cover a game. Someone had gotten sick. A full-timer, and they said, would you cover a game? Well, I don't have a driver's license, so my dad drives me to the high school game, cover the game, and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying. As much as I wasn't ready for this, but they apparently thought I was. So I took the best notes I could. I watched the game, and I go back home to write my story. I also didn't know how to type at the time, so I had a yellow legal pad. And I did happen to put in a piece of carbon paper, if anyone remembers what that is.
Sure, yeah.
And write my story in longhand, and it takes up about 3/4 of a yellow legal sheet of paper. Dad drives me down to the office. I walk in, go to the high school editor, a guy named Les, and Les, here's my story. And he looks at it, and Les was a pretty gruff guy. Love him, but he was, as I say, he pulled no punches. What the hell is this? He just looks at it. I said, what's my story? And he just kind of looked at me and I guess understood the circumstances. We sent him out there. I guess we get what we paid for. And he tossed it on his desk and said, okay, great. So I walk away thinking I had done my job. The next morning, it's a Sunday newspaper, and I could barely sleep waiting for it to arrive. And I open up the sports section, 1, 2, 3, 4, get to about page 7 or 8 of the section, and there is a headline, and there is my byline, and I didn't even look beyond the byline. I was just shaking with excitement, and then I start reading the story, and I pulled out the carbon of I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at the carbon. And it's got no resemblance whatsoever of what I had written.
Wait, we're not putting you in the Hall under false pretense.
Yeah, you might right. And it was rewritten thoroughly, but I did love the fact that I had gotten a byline, and I cut it out. Les later told me he called the coaches of both teams to get some details that I had left out. But that was the humble beginning, and I kept that in my wallet till it was yellow, just because it was a start.
Sure,
it was
absolutely.
a beginning. And then, other things went along with that. And it's been it's been an incredible ride that, frankly, I mean, this honor is, of course, I'm over the top, over the moon with that. But you don't think about recognition. You think about telling stories, telling good stories, and working and getting to know people. And the beauty of this business is it is a people business. I know we are fascinated with X's and O's, with strategies, and everybody's an amateur coach or GM, but it's the humans who play this game. And I always have felt that if you tell good stories, the people will want to read what you write or want to hear what you have to say.
Sure. Now, first NFL field you walked on, or first NFL press box you went in. Tell me about that feeling.
Right.
Is it the same as seeing the first byline, or is it
incredible. So my dad,
he didn't drive you to your first NFL job, did he?
He did. Well, not the first NFL job, but the first NFL game I saw was at the Rock Pile again as a fan. And right around that time, maybe a little older than 15, but it was the Bills were playing the L.A. Rams, and the Rams were my team as a kid. I didn't grow up in Central New York. The Bills were not as big there as obviously they are now. And Roman Gabriel and the Rams were coming to town and coming to the East Coast, and my dad figured that out, got tickets, knew my passion for it. And I grew up in a family, they weren't sports fans when it all began. My father really wasn't. He was an engineer. My mother, who is here today, 95 years old, wasn't into it. My older brother, into broadcasting, but music, not sports. This tells you the importance of family support. When they got behind, they saw my passion for it. My mom arranged dinner time on Sundays so that I could watch those 4 o'clock Ram games that CBS would televise, from the West Coast. And that's the support that I think gets you, or being driven to the game. So my dad, again, I go to the Rock Pile. Now, the first NFL game I did cover was in South Jersey for the Courier Post, the Philadelphia Eagles, and watching them, with Ron Jaworski at quarterback, his jersey here in this hall, Lackawanna guy, and that was the incredible experience. Dick Vermeil was the head coach, and I stopped being a fan of the NFL virtually from that first moment of covering an NFL team, because I saw how the sausage was made, because I saw professionals, guys who are paid to play a game, are different than what I thought this rah-rah life was about all my life as a fan. I'm not going to say I was disillusioned at all. That would be the wrong way to put it. But it gave me a different perspective. Walking into a locker room and seeing Stan Walters, former Syracuse star and offensive tackle for the Eagles, chain smoking after practice. Chain smoking at his locker. And I'm thinking, an athlete's chain smoking. That was a revelation. And all the other things. Dick Vermeil, a workaholic, insane about the job, slept in his office. Ron Jaworski, if it wasn't for Jaws, I'm not sure this career would have gone where it went, because Jaws at least gave me the sense that, hey, these guys are talkative and they give you good stuff. It's not always true,
right? Yeah.
But it would take me a while to figure out
find
they're
the right
not
guys,
all Ron
right?
Jaworski.
Right,
find the right guys. So
You had such a rise during the Bills' 4 years.
Yeah.
The passion's in you on what you do. Is there one moment from that 4-year run, or one person, or an interview, or somebody from that era that just really? I mean, I know you were all over Jim.
Yeah.
We did that show together.
Right.
That stuff.
Sure.
But it's such a passion for that team.
I would say I used to joke that my reporter's notebook was like a divining rod, that you walk in the locker room and, where's it going to take you? And it would gravitate naturally to Steve Tasker. It would gravitate to Kent Hull. Kent was I always thought of him as kind of the locker room dad. He kind of had this presence about him, the wisdom beyond his years, and it was so helpful. And I learned this, that offensive linemen usually give you the best insights because they're seeing the game from the inside out, and they're involved in every play. And they have a good feel for it. And they were usually the first people I would make a point. I would say, well, you talk to the star quarterback, you talk to the receiver, whatever. Freddie Smerlas, although he was right before that run, was also, again, a character, but fun and a guy who explained the game so well. And that was the other. I felt my job was to be the conduit. I'm where most people who care about the team or the games can't be. So my job would be do the best I can while with this access to let them know. Through the years, it's changed, obviously, and I think the curtain's been pulled so far back. But in the days of when I started doing this, that curtain was either closed or maybe open that much, and there was more responsibility, more obligation to tell people what was going on. During that Super Bowl run, yes, it gave me. I went from feeling like a guy covering a team on a local, regional basis to a national perspective, and that was when I got to know so many of the top national either writers or network television people or whatever, because they wanted a piece of the team and they wanted information. And again, pre-internet days, whatever, pre-cell phone days, you actually had phone call conversations. You actually had group conversations, and people took notes. I get to a Super Bowl, they had a press conference for me to talk to the other writers to give them background on the Bills, in addition to whatever else they got from the Bills PR department or the league. The idea was an objective perspective. So that was enlightening, was in the context that were made in the course of all that time served me well, I felt.
Well, we're looking forward to honoring you and the other inductees in November. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. My pleasure. This is tremendous.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Perfect.
All right.
Thanks, man.